1, 2, 3.
That's the way we walk in.
Hello, and welcome to After Further Review. Today we are going to unbox a very important shoe to me. One that I believe is quintessential to the sneaker industry and the sneaker culture. But before we do that, I want to get into a little bit of background. For those of you who don't know, I am a credentialed sports reporter that covers Deion Sanders and the CU Buffs. As part of that, I write articles, I attend press conferences, I'm at the games, all that jazz. On the article side, I have written 13 articles since last August about this particular shoe. Mostly because it's something that Coach Prime and Nike are promoting, so being in the position I am, I thought it would be a good idea to promote it. By my count, no one else on the planet has put out more than 6. Back in August, I wrote an article that basically suggested that if this CU regime is going to, pardon the pun, but start out on the right foot, and in doing so, want to bring their own sense of drip, the only way, the best way to do that is to have Deion Sanders run out of the tunnel at TCU, rocking these very shoes, with his team following behind in the same shoes in cleat form. Roughly about 48 hours later, Bucky, or Deion Sanders Jr., the head of Well Off Media, put out a video confirming they would do just that. And I have written articles at every turn about this shoe along the way. Another fun little tidbit was in November, when Nike officially announced that it was going to release these shoes. I had the privilege of standing in Coach Prime's press conference room and was able to ask him this.
Woo, y'all feeling good now. Let's go. Feeling good now.
Hey Coach, Jason Jones, Bell Speed. I got a bit of an off-speed one for you here. This morning it's being widely reported that Nike is going to release your original
Oh, for real?
Nike Air Diamond Turf 3. Even something as quintessentially important to the sneaker culture as that shoe, because it changed a lot of things.
Yes, sir.
Is there any chance your current Prime Effect can influence a black and Colorado gold colorway?
Yes, that may be in the works. Yes, that will happen. So Nike's doing a phenomenal job of outfitting us all, and I'm thankful. So every time you think we losing, we wind up winning.
Now, Nike has confirmed officially that that shoe is coming out. They're calling it the Colorado Road, which will be primarily black and gold. Mineral gold to match the CU uniforms, the shoe I asked for. Now, you would think with someone writing that many articles promoting the single product to that extent, that Nike might have reached out, sent a sample, or let us do this unboxing before the release date. But no, actually what ended up happening is I wrote 13 articles, and about 7 of those had release date information. When we reached out to Nike Direct about confirming our release date, their response was something more to the effect of, how on earth do you know that? So, to say I've had my finger on the pulse of this shoe is a dramatic oversimplification. Now, let's get into the fun stuff. So, 10 months, we've been waiting for this. 10 months, covering this team, asking questions, reaching out to Nike, following the scent of the trail, so to speak. And that comes to fruition now. Oh, there she is. The Nike Air Diamond Turf 3. Or the Nike Air DT96, if you want to be really technical about it. Now, we are going to run through some of the details on this. I know you've probably seen a lot of unboxing of shoes, and people have a tendency to talk about the comfort of it. We'll get there. As well as things like slip protection and how does it move laterally. We'll talk about all that, but I'm going to give you a lot more than you're accustomed to getting. But just in case you're wondering, that's what the box looks like. I wish we could have gotten the commemorative Coach Prime edition, but, you know, we got to be better friends with Coach Prime for that. We'll leave this up here just to frame everything nicely. First thing you should notice is it's kind of wild. But what I want to draw your attention to first is the logo. Zoom in on that. This logo might actually be the most epic, simplistically beautiful logo that any Nike shoe has ever had. Now, whether this was Tinker Hatfield or not, I can't say for certain. That logo, in its simplistic beauty, has been unmatched. Deion Sanders was maybe the greatest athlete we've ever seen. Played football and baseball. What could be a better logo than taking a home plate and jamming a goalpost into it? I wish other signature shoes had this beauty. The Jordan logo is the one everyone's going to go to. Okay, is it simply beautiful? Absolutely. But it's just Jordan jumping and posing in a dunk pose. That doesn't take a whole lot of mental genius. This did. As we leave the logo, we are going to move over to the tongue. From the side profile, that just looks like a tongue. Like any other tongue you've ever seen on any shoe. The assumption is that the tongue is long and skinny, attaches at the forefoot, and is just flowing there. An advance that Nike made a long time ago, this is way pre-1991, is taking the tongue and attaching it to the bottom of the shoe using elastic bands. The Nike Air Pennymax 1 also has a nice tongue, but not connected. If not, for the little straps inside. What's nice about this, though, and I don't know that there's going to be an easy way to show you, but what is nice about this one is that there are no straps. The tongue simply goes straight down. The tongue goes down all the way to the bottom of the shoe, the insole, the side panel. In the early 90s, Nike popularized what most of us sneakerheads refer to as the inner sock. The easiest example of that would be the original Nike Air Huarache Run. If you look very carefully, you can see the whole thing is one piece. This is one piece. Every shoe is built with something called a last, L-A-S-T. It is essentially the form or shape of your foot inside the shoe. Once that last is set, the shoe is built around it. And when doing so, you want the shoe to fit, but you don't want it to be too tight, especially for an athletic shoe. What Nike did was create the inner sock. The inner sock is exactly what it sounds like. You put your foot with a sock on it in the inner sock. As you've done that, the inner sock fills those gaps between the shoe and the last shape. What's interesting is the inner sock is about a 1/4 inch thick and isn't always the best idea. It is for a lot of things, but not always. There are lots of shoes that utilize the inner sock. This is the LeBron 4 Graffiti. Also a phenomenal shoe. If you've tried this on and it didn't fit, it's because the insole's an inch thick. Take the insole out, replace it with an aftermarket that's a little bit smaller, and this thing might be the best shoe you've ever worn. Now, when we come back to the Pennymax 1, if we look at the tongue, it's relatively thin. It's a little thinner than your typical Huarache. This sucker, though, this bad boy, I don't know if you can see this, that is the thinnest inner sock or tongue I've ever seen of a performance variety. That sock goes all the way down. Now, it leaves the back open, so you might be wondering, why is that? Think of it like a slipper your grandfather maybe would have worn. Completely closed-toed, goes across the top of the foot, and then there's just a flat piece that your heel sits on. That's essentially what the design feature is. And why is that? Because of the overpronounced, very important, heel counter. Now, if we were to take this shoe and cut it in half, don't worry, I'm absolutely not doing that. But if we were to cut this sucker long and pull it apart, we will be able to see that there is actually a very sturdy, hard piece of plastic here. Also, if you feel in here, you can actually feel that there is a section for your Achilles tendon to sit in beautifully. There's also padding right here around the ankles. And what that does is once this shoe has your foot in it and you lock it down, your foot is going to sit nice and snug in the back heel counter, which is what you want. And then everything is going to move from tight snug to looser as we move forward. And that has to do with Dion the player more than anything else. Sturdy heel counter, great tongue, very impressive insulation around the ankle, the real joint of the foot, right? This brings us down to this guy. Now this absolutely is an invention made by Tinker Hatfield. That is the full Max Air heel pad. Now, you're probably looking at this and going, yeah, there are hundreds, if not thousands of shoes that have this. They do. You're absolutely right. The first time I ever saw it was on the Nike Air Max 93. Also had a very interesting and thin inner sock, but it was the first time I ever saw it. Here's where this gets different and interesting. At first glance, there's nothing fancy about it. It looks just like every other one, right? Where this gets interesting is the response. If you get your hands on a pair of these, this is the first thing I want you to do. I want you to squeeze this air bubble. I want you to move around, squeeze it. Try to push it. Try to see the air pressure. Try to see if it gives a lot. The answer is it does not. We'll come back to the Penny Max, which, by the way, this came out right about the same time. So, still, male Nike Air Max heel pad. This one has significantly more give. And if we want to really get crazy, let's talk about something that's not even a basketball, football, field shoe at all. The Nike Air Max 97. Now you'll notice that this Air Max goes heel to toe. But again, when you squeeze it, it absolutely gives more than the Diamond Turf 3. And I have a theory about that. We'll get to more of the details as we move forward. But keep in mind, I said you want to go sturdy and tough back. As you move forward, it should get lighter and more flexible. So it's important that this thing is responsive. Ask yourself, if you're designing a shoe, like Nike has done since 1984, a signature shoe for an athlete, you're designing that shoe for that specific athlete. Unlike the previous way, where you would design one shoe and you would just give it to all your signature athletes. This way, you're specifically tailoring this to the athlete. If we think about Dion playing just football, how much of his time do you think was spent on his heels? The answer is not very often. When he does go to his heels, chances are he's changing direction, which means that can't sag. That needs to be springy, for lack of a better term. That thing's got to be sturdy and real, and it is. More so than probably any other shoe I have that has the Max Air heel cushion pad in it. Again, visualize Dion as a player. Left to right, lots of moves. He's got to go this way, then go that way, real fast. So, the shoe cannot give when he's moving left and right. We'll look at the sole for a second here. I'm just going to hit this real quick and move on. But you see these little circles? This is a style that was basically introduced to cross trainers by way of the Huarache. You'll find some version of this on almost every Huarache that comes out, with the exception of the Runner. The Runner is just a waffle sole. Now, these holes, these circles, that move all the way around the perimeter of the shoe, and even down the front of the forefoot, that almost feels like a basketball feature. Because you see this a lot in court-specific performance basketball shoes. My favorite of which, my personal grail, is the Nike Air Foamposite 1, the big bright blue one. If you flip that over and look on the insole underneath, you're going to find nothing but dimples. It looks like a flattened golf ball. And the reason for that is when you cut on a court, as you land, you are actually trapping air molecules inside that area to limit slippage, or limit where you go hard and slide a little bit. Now, maybe it helps on turf, maybe it helps a little bit on grass. But if you're ever wondering what those circles are for, typically in an outsole, it's to trap air molecules to limit slippage. Now, the reason I want to show you this, we'll get to this in a second, but let's do the Dion thing. If you look very carefully, inside that little yellow, you will actually see an ink blot cartoon version of young primetime Deion Sanders, I believe, with the bandana and all. If we focus on this arch, if you look very carefully, it's not super pronounced. It doesn't go really high. In the Diamond Turf 1s, which are coming out next year, you will also find these. But more importantly, you're going to see that the midsole comes really high up the side. Now, whether that was a creative choice or Deion maybe didn't like it, they decided to do away with that. Well, this is very interesting, because with the structure of the sole, you're going to have the arch support. There's no problem with that. You put your hand inside the shoe, and you're not exactly feeling a pronounced arch, but it's there. It's built into the sole. The other really fun thing here, and I don't get to say this very often, I'm not a huge fan of Nike shoes that have a strap or a zipper. And the reason for that is Nike, the last that they use to model their shoes is very typically a very athletic foot. I haven't been an athlete in 2 decades. So my foot is flat, wide. So a lot of times when I slide into a shoe, if I want to strap this down, I either have to strap it like this, and anybody that's ever done this knows you're going to get dust bunnies and all kinds of cotton particles stuck to the Velcro. You really don't want that. So a lot of times, I do the 90s thing. I hate to age myself, but being one of the kids that did help build Nike's culture, I have always just done this. Now, cute little pro tip. If you slide the Velcro part further than you typically would, it will sometimes stand up on its own if that's a look you're going for. But I will typically do this just to preserve the strap, because I know strapping it down, I'm going to wear it out, and it's going to be too tight for me. The beauty of this shoe, one of the many things that I just cannot get over, when you slide your foot into this, you tie it using the speed lacing, which we'll come back around to. But once you strap this down, it's not too tight right off the top, and it's insulatingly comfortable. This might be the most functional strap I've ever had on a Nike shoe. Maybe ever. Because you go from comfortable, I can just run errands in this, or I can go to the movies, I can do whatever in it, to strap it down, you're going to feel like you're supported in a way that says, yeah, I could go run right now. And I haven't ran anywhere in years. But that's the feeling. We're going to come back around to lateral support, but I do want to take a moment and focus on the speed lacing. Now, speed lacing has been a thing for Nike forever. So speed lacing, for those that don't know, is basically, instead of having eyelets where the laces go through holes, you create a loop, and the lace goes through that. And then when you slip your shoe off, the shoe is loosened. When you put your shoe back on, all you have to do is grab the laces and pull, and the whole thing will go just like that. It's that easy. They literally took like the Back to the Future idea with the Nike Air Mags that are self-lacing and just said, all you got to do is pull. And the whole thing it's beautiful. And to be honest with you, unless we're talking about, I don't know, a Penny 2 or, an Air Force 1, a Dunk, a Jordan 1, Jordan 3, stuff like that, I honestly don't know why they don't put speed laces in everything. Now, style this, style that, but speed lacing is a phenomenal invention. As we move down the lacing and the tongue, I want you to take a special note. Right down the middle is a double stitch seam that crosses every single inner sock you will ever come across. Might be hard to see, but right above the Huarache logo, you can see it protruding at the top of that tongue. But underneath the LeBron logo, you can also see it there. This is a Huarache or inner sock feature. It guarantees that the inner sock will not fall apart. Chances are the inner sock will stay intact longer than everything else. If you bought this shoe and wore it every single day for the foreseeable future, 100 years from now, this stitch will still be there. Now, if we stop there, it's phenomenal, fantastic, moving on, right? But we're not going to stop there. And I'm going to try to mess with the laces so you can see it. If you look at that front lace that I have pulled, you'll notice that that double stitch seam not only goes the length of the inner sock, but is actually the anchor connecting what would have been the end of the inner sock to the forefoot of the shoe. To my knowledge, I can't remember ever seeing that anywhere else. You have, down the middle, you have that reinforcement. And then across the toe box, you have that reinforcement. Now, I do want to give a warning to my fellow big boys. Okay? Now, I'm not calling out necessarily all athletes or just regular people who put on a few pounds. Maybe you're just a big dude. Maybe you played football once upon a time. You wear a size 15. It's hard to find things. If you would categorize yourself as being a big person, this cross stitch is of a concern to you. It's not the only place Nike has this. For anyone who is, let's say, bigger, that has bought a Nike football jersey recently, since the redesign, you'll notice there is a stitch that goes right through the middle. Call it the torso. I call it the fat man stitch. When you put these on, if you buy them in exactly the size you always buy, there is a possibility that you will feel a little pressure right here. I'm not saying that that's a design feature I don't like. I love that design feature. Now, some other things. We got to talk about stitching. The Nike Air Foamposite 1, which is a molded rubber plastic. Okay, it's not suede, it's not leather, it's not mesh. It is a molded piece. The reason that shoe is so phenomenal from an anti-slip standpoint is the dimples we talked about, again, when you're cutting. But secondarily to that, the Foamposite 1 has, count them, three north to south stitches on the entire shoe. Structurally, there are only 3 stitches on the entire shoe, which means once you stop, you stop. There's no slippage whatsoever. This shoe takes the idea of that, since it's not molded rubber, and it says, well, we want that level of stability. How do we do that? And we do that through stitching. So, first off, I would say this is probably not my favorite thing, this little M stitch. If you look very carefully, you can see it right at the front of the toe. That, while, maybe you might look at that and say that's not what I would have chose to do, that creates not only stability in the toe box, but because of the M design, it's going to make sure that you don't have much creasing right here. Now, if you imagine, the bend is here, where you want it. That stitch we talked about creates stability in the toe box. When you bend, this ain't bending, which is fine. We love this. Now, if we step away from all the lacing and the top of the shoe, let's look at the design here. Now, I've always been a creative guy, and I wasn't on the Nike creative team that made this. But when I look at this, the first thing comes to mind are flames. You can call them what you want, but the white parts that come up feel like flames to me, so we're just going to call them flames. If it was just color, then it's just a visual thing. Who cares? This is not just color. This is structure. When you get this shoe in your hand and you start feeling around these various flame designs, you're going to see something very important. The white part is the beginning. The black part is on top and literally stitched in. So, for someone like Dion who needs the utmost lateral support for when he moves left and right, how do you make sure that every point along the shoe is laterally stable? And the way you do that is through the stitching. So, before we hit the stitching, toe box reinforced. Strap reinforces the midfoot, and the heel counter locks in the back. That would be enough for almost anyone else not named Deion Sanders. All of these are surrounded by stitching. Tight, dense stitching on every single one. Every place where the white goes up is stitching. So, 1, 2, 3, and then we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You don't go a single inch without there being some sort of significant stitching. And then, if we go ahead and we pop the strap again, and we take a look, there is also significant stitching in and around the entire speed lacing system. So what does this mean for you? This means that if you want to go try out for an NFL team, you can do it in this. If you're a big gym rat person and you work out 3, 4, 5 times a week and all you want is something that you can run in, that you can lift weights in, that you could do lateral training in, it's this. If you're more like me, and this shoe provides you a great deal of nostalgia, and it comes from a period of Nike shoes that is to you the renaissance of footwear and has never been equaled, then this shoe is an absolute must for you. If you're just a fan of the shoe, you just like how it looks, and you think, well, I don't do a whole lot of active stuff, but when I do, I'd like to have one shoe. I'd like to not be a sneakerhead and go buy everything that I've ever fell in love with. Then you want this, because it is multifaceted, multifunctional. The support is through the roof. The design features are classic. It is a look that will never be forgotten. And as I've mentioned throughout this video, this is a quintessential shoe. It may not be Mount Rushmore of the sneaker community, but if it's not, it's within the same zip code. It is as well-rounded as a shoe as you're going to find. If we stop there, that would be enough to convince all of you that you need to have this shoe. But we're not going to stop there. Now, I will tag all of my 13 articles on this shoe in this video description. But to save you from going and reading what essentially equates to, 26,000 words roughly, I'm gonna give you a quick history lesson. So, why do I think this shoe is so important beyond the reasons I've already mentioned? Before this shoe came out, if you played football in a cross-training, heavy, bulky, works for all positions kind of a shoe. All those cleats were cleats, and that's all they were. There was nothing that said this is specifically tailored for the activity I'm doing. The spikes were specific to football. Some of them had the little turf nubs that you find on the Nike Air Zoom Turf Jet 97 that was made for Barry Sanders. A lot of the design features in that, taken from this guy. Whether you want to believe me or not, this shoe changed the game, quite literally. Because if you look out now on the landscape, whether you are watching an NFL game, a college game, maybe you're watching practice like on a well-off media video, what do you see most football players wearing? Are they wearing clunky, big football cleats? Very rarely. Just from my own perspective covering Colorado, all throughout the summer camp last year before the season started, Shador practiced in Nike Dunk Panda cleats. Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles wears Jordans. Number of players wear Jordan cleats. The point is, this shoe is what convinced the world that you don't need a football shoe to play football. And quite frankly, a football shoe is disadvantageous to a football player. Football shoe is going to have a wide base, be relatively heavy, have very pronounced spikes, and the upper is going to need to breathe. So half the time it's a mesh, half the time it's leather. It's just a mess. The football cleat situation was not good. Because of all the design features we've already talked about, Nike and other manufacturers have realized you could literally put spikes on a very solid basketball shoe and be more than halfway there to a shoe designed specifically for the activity in mind. So what we have is the shoe version. I will tag Connect in this well so you can see what the cleat form looks like. Once this shoe hit the market and once people saw how Dion performed in it, it absolutely became a groundswell. And from then on, every single signature football shoe that has ever come out has taken ideas from this or associated itself more as a basketball shoe with football tendencies. And that's why you'll see LeBrons, you'll see Air Force Ones, you'll see any number of signature shoes turned into cleats. Because basketball shoes, currently, in the modern era, actually make for the best football cleats. Not only is this a daring thing to look at, it is structurally maybe the most sound shoe that ever came out of the mid-90s for its intended design purpose. And it's Dion. Have you seen the picture of the Lambo inspired by this design? If you're a sneakerhead out to collect all the important shoes that you want in your collection, you absolutely need this. If you're a 90s kid who just remembers them, you need this. Especially in today's market landscape when you consider this cost versus the cost of, say, a Jordan 4 or a Kobe Pro Growth 6. The cost of these is actually not horrible when you compare it to what you could be spending. But the look of it, the moment of it, the nostalgia of it, the structure of it, whether we are talking about the daring, stylistic look of the shoe that could only be pulled off by one Deion Sanders back in 1996, or you're talking about it as a sneakerhead just wanting a shoe that was monumentally important to the sneaker culture, you want this shoe. If it's a nostalgia thing, you just remember it, you want this shoe. Or if you're just an active person that just needs a shoe that's going to keep up with you, that has the durability, has the flexibility, has all the things you need it to do, whether you're going to work, running errands, going to the gym, whatever it is, coming back around to the daring part, if you look at this and you're like, yeah, I hate to say it, everything sounds great, I just don't dig the half black, half white. If it's the light and the dark thing, I get it. If it's the white thing, I get it. Because as a big guy, I don't do well with white. I will be spending so much time cleaning these shoes. If any of those are concerns for you, what you want is to take a look at the release date schedule. Next one, we believe, is going to be August 14th. But every time I mention a release date, Nike seems to change it. So, pencil it in, don't ink it in. August 14th is the Colorado Home, which will be white where you see black and gold where you see white. Now, still very bright shoe, so maybe not your speed. The next one, the Colorado Road. Everywhere you see black will be black, but everywhere you see white will be mineral gold. Don't wait, we're not done. Big one, Holiday 2024. This is the one you're looking for. If you're looking for a darker shoe that's going to last longer, won't get dirty, or you just know you're going to run it through the ringer. Everywhere you see black on this shoe will be black on that shoe. Everywhere you see yellow, even the little highlights in the flames, will be red. And everywhere you see white will be like a charcoal gray. That shoe, that could be a beater. I mean, that's a shoe you could wear every single day if you wanted to. So Holiday 2024, Falcons released colorway. And then this next gem, we get courtesy of Dion's Twitter account, that there will actually be, not including this, 4. Colorado Home, Colorado Road, Falcons, with a 4th one yet to be determined. Now, there's one other colorway here that feels like is missing. So you have the original, the OG, the black-white maize. Then you got the 2 Colorados. Then you got the Falcons, right? Now, we know later in 2025 the DT1 is going to come out in the white, black, red, and gold. You have Falcons, 49ers, kinda, Colorado. The only thing that's missing from all of this that is not one of his one-offs. I'm not talking about Washington Redskins, and I'm not talking about the Baltimore Ravens. The only other team of Dion's that is not listed is the Cowboys, and I think we would be foolish to believe that there will not be a Cowboys colorway. Now, before you ask, why am I being specific that every colorway has to have a story and every colorway has to relate back to a certain team? Because Dion said so. During the Super Bowl, they met with Nike, and during that conversation, it was mentioned that Dion wants every colorway to associate with a story. One of the stories he gave was that as a young boy in Southwest Florida, growing up in Fort Myers, Florida, it wasn't about dope, it wasn't about the car you drove. It was about, did you have gold on your person? So the shoe is a white, black, and red colorway with gold. Gold. Colorado Road, black and gold. Colorado Home, white and gold. Gold will be everywhere. Dion wants to tell the story about how important gold was to a young kid in Fort Myers, Florida in the 1980s. So to wrap this up, I, a sports reporter who covers CU and Coach Prime for an outlet that you know, has been chasing this shoe, this exact shoe, for almost a year now. I've written 13 articles promoting this shoe more than any other single person on the planet, and believe me, I've checked. And while chasing it and talking to Dion in press conferences about this shoe, 10 months later, I have it in my hand, and I'm telling you, as an admitted 35-year sneakerhead, this needs to be priority one on your shoe drops this year. Because let's be honest, how many Jordan 4s are coming out this year? Like 3 or 4 of them, right? How many Jordan 4s come out every year? How many Jordan 12s, Jordan 11s, Jordan 13s? Like I mentioned, the foam posits coming out later this year. That should also be on everyone's list. You can spend your time chasing Off-Whites and Yeezys and other cost envy shoes. You can spend $400, $500, $600, $700 on a shoe so that people will walk by and say, "Ooh, where'd you get that from?" The look you'll get with this is something different. This is for sneakerheads who appreciate the design features, not the resale value. Now, the resale value on these will go up, I guarantee it. But this is for the real ones. People that will wear this will wear it because they know it has history. They know it's important to the culture. But they will wear it because it means something to them. And I'm not sure that if having a limited quantity or $1,000 price tag is the same thing. This shoe is for the sneakerhead who understands nostalgia, understands history, understands where this shoe places in the history of the sneaker culture. The person that buys this buys it because of what it meant for everything that follows. This is an important shoe to the culture. And if you're a part of the culture, and if you're collecting shoes, or you just love shoes, this needs to be on your list. Regrettably, by the time you watch this video, these have been sold out. But if people come out for the other colorways, they may re-release another run of this, if the original is what you seek. But whether you're a Colorado fan, a Coach Prime fan, a sneakerhead, or just somebody that can appreciate a very well-crafted shoe that came during the time of Nike's Renaissance, $170 is not too much to ask, and this is a shoe that you absolutely need. We'll catch you next time, here on After Further Review.